Listen closely to what I say here. Quote, "There's only one way out of this reckless and damaging shutdown. Pass a budget that funds our government with no partisan strings attached. The American people don't get to demand ransom in exchange for doing their job. Neither does Congress." What I just read was a direct quote. Those are not my words. They belong to President Barack Obama. We're barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history unless Democrats drop their partisan demands and pass a clean, no-strings-attached budget to reopen the government and pay our federal workers. What Barack Obama demanded then is exactly what Republicans are saying now.
And that's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, on this ongoing government shutdown, now into week 3. Sources are telling me that the Democrats have agreed to keep the doors closed until after the No Kings rally this coming Saturday. The organizers of that rally told the Democrats and Chuck Schumer, if you don't keep this going, we will make you irrelevant, according to my sources. Hundreds of thousands of government workers, meanwhile, have been furloughed already in recent days. The Office of Management and Budget revealing well over 4,000 federal employees will soon be terminated. Joining me now is Missouri Congressman Jason Smith. He is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good to be with you, Maria.
So is that the reason that this government shutdown is barreling toward the longest shutdown, because the Democrats want to have some theatrics around that No Kings rally Saturday?
There's absolutely no question that this shutdown is strictly for political reasons. It's for Chuck Schumer and the liberal base of the Democrat Party just to protect their own, because there is such an extreme movement within the Democrat Party to oppose anything that Donald Trump is pushing for. And that's, in fact, why you have the shutdown. Maria, this is the first time in the history of America that any party has shut down government just for a continue funding of current funding levels with no strings attached. This is the very first time, and they're only doing it to appease their radical base.
So there's another Senate vote today. The Senate comes back after a couple of days off. Are you expecting that to fail as well? I know John Thune said he only needs 5 Democrat votes. He's got John Fetterman, one other Democrat, and one independent who voted with the Republicans. He needs 5 more votes. Will he get them today?
You know, I sure hope so. I hope just 5 Democrat senators will put the American people before politics. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that. They've done 8 different votes in the United States Senate. And let's think about it. They're not voting on the funding bill. It's all to break a filibuster that the Democrats are doing, and it won't even give them the opportunity to vote on a funding bill. The funding bill would pass in a second if they would stop the filibuster, Maria.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you know, President Trump has said he will not allow the military to miss a paycheck. So he's been trying to move money around, asked Pete Hegseth to help him move money around to ensure that the troops get paid on October 15th. You were very involved, obviously, in the leadership of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Is there wiggle room there to pay employees while this politicking and theatrics goes on and the shutdown continues in week 3?
What is so bogus to me is that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats wanted a shutdown, or they pushed for a shutdown, because that empowers the administration. It empowers the president, where he has a lot of extra levers to do things necessary to try to make pressure points not nearly as bad. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing. President Trump is making sure that the men and women in uniform, the 1.3 million Americans that would have lost their paycheck on Wednesday, are not going to, by moving around funds within the Department of Defense.
Okay, so that can happen until it doesn't happen anymore, right? I mean, I know. Look, the Democrats want something done on these health care subsidies, and the Obamacare subsidies. The House Ways and Means Committee is out with new data on the expanded ACA premium tax credits. What did you find? Because
Well,
the
when you look at
Democrats
these
claim that these subsidies only benefit wealthy enrollees, right? So yesterday we had Debbie Dingell on, and she said, "Listen, we can't have just billionaires getting health care." I was really taken aback. You know, obviously it's not billionaires that are getting health care subsidies, but that's what she said yesterday. So what did you find with this new data?
Well, it's quite interesting. In the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act, what in fact the Democrats did do was, for the first time ever, provide the ability for billionaires to receive subsidies for their health insurance premiums. This is what the Democrats are fighting for. Anyone above 400% of the federal poverty level is, in fact, what expires at the end of this year, that they would no longer get the subsidies. It would revert back to what the original Obamacare subsidies were. The same type of charts, the same type of measurements. What's crazy is there's 347 million Americans, and we're talking about 24 million Americans on healthcare exchanges, is why the Democrats are blocking government funding as a whole. 167 million Americans alone are on employee-based health care. 78 million Americans are on Medicare, and 82 million Americans are on Medicaid. So we're talking about the smallest group of all of Americans is what the Democrats are holding out for, and it happens to be some of the wealthiest.
So how do we reopen government? What is the plan?
The way you reopen government is exactly to vote for why they closed down government. All we're doing is asking for people to vote for funding that was on September 30th to be today until there's an agreement. These these insurance subsidies don't expire until December 31st.
Right.
December 31st. And this was something that the Democrats put as temporary. They did it during COVID. And so if they wanted it made permanent, they should have did it in the Inflation Reduction Act or the American Rescue Plan. Like in the big, beautiful bill, we made tax policy permanent. However, they chose to make it sunset, and now they're regretting that decision.
Well, I mean, Senator Mike Rounds was talking about an idea of coming halfway and doing a limited subsidies extension for 1 year and then going back to pre-COVID operations after that. I mean, is there anything to talk about in terms of coming to the middle in terms of those Obamacare subsidies, or are you saying we're not going to negotiate while the government is closed, reopen the government, and then we can have these discussions before this extension, before this expiration happens at year end?
Maria, these insurance subsidies have nothing to do with funding government. It's just what the Democrats chose to block and justify for. We are willing to negotiate, but we're not going to negotiate until you open up government and stop punishing the American people. They're virtually shutting down government because they want to extend these subsidies and they want to provide health care for illegal immigrants. And guess what? They want to cut $50 billion from rural health care. That doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone in their right mind support those demands? When we think of healthcare transformation, we can negotiate. We can figure out a common ground, but open up government and then let's get the job done.
Let me switch gears, get your take on this trade war with China that seems to be accelerating. China is now sanctioning 5 U.S. subsidiaries of South Korea's Hanwha Ocean and threatening more retaliation. Of course, we know that China last week tightened the screws on America by saying that they're going to tighten restrictions on rare earth minerals. And then President Trump goes back at them and says, look, we're going to institute a 100% tariff. I spoke with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, about it yesterday and really zeroed in on the U.S.'s reliance on China's refining of rare earth minerals right now. Watch. The DOD acquired a stake representing 15% of MP Materials. Tell us why this is so important, because I know that there are rare earth minerals in the United States and across the world, but it is the refining of those rare earth that happens in China, and that's what we need to bone up in America.
The U.S. used to control rare earth processing and refining, and the Chinese bought a U.S. company. It was required that was kept in the U.S. for 5 years. 5 years and a day, they moved it to China, and they have a stranglehold on, as you said, the refining and processing. Rare earths in general are not rare, they're everywhere, but it is the refining and processing. And what's happened over the past 2 decades is anytime a refining or processing facility has been set up either in the U.S. or in a free market country, the Chinese come in and undercut the price. So we have invested in Mountain Pass, and we are going to do the equivalent of an Operation Warp Speed to get security in this rare earth processing. And in this at the same time, we are going to guarantee floor prices for the processing, for the refining, because you can't have a free market when there is a non-free market state actor destroying capacity.
Mr. Chairman, we were talking with the Secretary of Treasury while President Trump was in Israel. That was those pictures there. But look, the U.S. and China are also charging additional port fees now on ocean shipping firms beginning today. So the fight is deepening. And, you know, I sit here and I'm just stumped as to why we have such an incredible reliance on China for such critical items like 90% of the underlying components of our pharmaceuticals made in China. You know, 90% of the advanced semiconductor chips made in Taiwan. You know, and I'm trying to understand why it was that it was President Trump who pushed corporate America to get their supply chains in America. In the last 10 years, your colleagues on the left have been trying to take down their political enemy, President Trump, and screaming about Russia, Russia. Look at the dereliction of duty that has occurred here. And we sit today having to scramble to buy companies, buy stakes in companies so that we can have the excellence that China already has in refining rare earth minerals.
Exactly right, Maria. The Democrat Party, Joe Biden was out to lunch when it came to holding China accountable.
Oh, yeah.
We've been trying to hit the siren for a long time that they are controlling global supply chains, and that's in fact what they're doing. It's not just the United States that they're affecting in rare earths and the refinery aspects and the magnets. It's the world. They are now flexing their muscles, and this is what the president's been worried about. They're flexing their muscles to try to put pressure points on the United States and other countries. Right. We have to learn from this and make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, and by the way, that whole story that Scott Besson just told us about how it was an American company doing the refining and then China acquired it, that is the classic example of what John Ratcliffe has told me for years is the MO of China: rob, replicate, replace. So I hope corporate America is hearing this, which, you know, is that they're so interested in selling their wares to 1.4 billion people in China. It doesn't end well. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. Jason Smith joining us. We'll be right back.
Good.